On April 9, 2018, a school bus filled with children fell into a gorge in Nurpur, Himachal Pradesh. 28 children died in the crash, some as young as 4 years old. The bus had left the school campus at 3 p.m. to drop the children to their homes. It had barely covered 6 kilometers when, due to the absence of crash barriers on the site, the bus fell in a deep gorge, resulting in this fatal plunge. A day after, at the scene of the crash, one could only find the school bags with notebooks strewn around, an attempt to identify the dead children. Every year, India loses an unacceptable number of people, including children, to road crashes. About 1.5 lakh people die in road crashes every year. Is it possible to significantly reduce this fatality rate? Welcome to Milestones, the Save Life podcast with me, Karthik Nagarajan. This is a show where we discuss various aspects of road safety with the aim of ultimately working towards safer roads and a safer India. I'm your host, Karthik Nagarajan, and today we are joined on the show by Mr. Piyush Tewari, founder and CEO of SaveLIFE Foundation, the folks behind this podcast. SaveLIFE Foundation, or SLF, is an independent, non-profit, non-governmental organization committed to saving lives on roads in India. Among one of its biggest achievements is securing for India its first ever Good Samaritan law that provides legal and procedural insulation to bystanders, passers-by, and first responders when they step up to help road crash victims. Among their other notable achievements is the zero fatality corridor model, which is deployed on multiple high fatality highways across India. So many things to discuss. Who could have been a better guest for the finale episode of this series other than Mr. Piyush Tewari himself? Piyush, the Save Life Foundation has been working in various ways to ensure safe roads as an undeniable right for each individual. It's a fundamental right that each one of us should be able to enjoy, but it's not, isn't it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, our the Constitution of India guarantees right to life with dignity, and we know that roads are what connect us to our employment, to our education, to our healthcare. In a way, these are arteries to ensure a life with dignity. Now, when people are, not safe on these arteries, when people are killed while trying to, access schools, colleges, hospitals, their places of work, then we are denying them the right to life with dignity. And our work at Save Life for the last 15 years has been focused on ensuring that people get safe roads as a right, so they can access these services and their um, uh, you know for their life with ease of access and safety and so on and so forth.
You mentioned Save Life. Tell us a bit about the origin story of it. What made you want to start this foundation?
Sure. Most of us know someone or the other who's been affected by a road crash.
Hmm.
In my case, unfortunately, back in 2007, our family was struck with a traumatic incident where I lost a young cousin in a road crash. And the circumstances surrounding his death, which is, the incident happening, the delay in care, is what, fundamentally, shook me and got me to start looking at the issue a lot more closely. And when I researched the issue, I realized that just that year in 2007, India had surpassed China to become world number one in road crash fatalities. And in the
Hmm.
previous decade, over 1 million people had been killed on Indian roads. But not just that, I also discovered that just like in my cousin's case, nearly 50% of those who died despite having treatable injuries. Their life could have been saved if they had received even basic assistance from bystanders, passers-by, and so on and so forth. So In his case, unfortunately, while a number of people gathered around the crash scene, nobody really called the police, the ambulance, and nobody rushed him to a hospital until it was too late. And that is the fate of a lot of people in our country when they meet with a road crash. And these are the circumstances that got me to start looking at the issue closely. I researched a lot more and decided that something had to be done about it. And that is how, in February 2008, about 9 months after the incident, Save Life was born. And, it's been 15 years since we've been working on this issue.
Wow. Firstly, I'm sorry you had to recount, that terrible tragedy.
It's okay.
But I'm also, it's inspiring that you've been able to channel, your emotions in such a positive way and create something that all of us
Thank
can
you.
can benefit from. So hats off to you on that one.
Thank you.
Um, you know, when I looked at the numbers, right, it seems to me like most researchers put the number of road crashes every year to about us losing about 1.5 lakh people, right? Which in any part of the world is an unacceptable number, right? And I'm also cognizant of the fact that probably this is only what we're able to measure, and maybe what we are not able to measure is an
Right.
incremental number to this. In your opinion, as someone who's been affected and someone who's deeply researched this subject, where does the fundamental problem lie?
Yeah. You're right. Over 150,000 people are killed each year on our roads. And most tragically, about 500,000 people are also left seriously injured or permanently disabled, after these incidents. And nearly 50% of those who are killed and injured come from extremely poor backgrounds. These are people who are out on the roads to earn a living. These are people who can't afford safer modes of transport. And in that process of trying to earn a livelihood, trying to access school education, and so on and so forth, they are affected by this issue, either in the form of death or severe disability. Uh, Now, there are various reasons why crashes happen. The way we look at it scientifically is that there is always a cause of crash and a cause of injury. So we analyze both of them separately. So a crash can be caused because of human error, like drinking and driving, overspeeding, sudden lane changing. It could happen because of engineering issues, where you might have exposed concrete structures, potholes, uneven road surfaces, sharp curvatures that might lead to crashes. And it might happen because of vehicular issues. It might happen because of tire bursts. It might happen because of brake fading or brake failure. So there are multiple reasons why a crash might happen. Then what causes an injury is oftentimes a bit different. What might cause injury is, for example, not wearing a helmet or a seatbelt in the event of that crash. So if you're not wearing a seatbelt in the back seat, for example, you will go and hit other occupants, and you go and you will hit the vehicle's interiors, causing severe injury to most people. Similarly, with helmets, a cause of injury could be vehicular issues, like the passenger compartment completely intrudes onto the occupant because of poor safety standards, in that particular vehicle. It could also happen because of infrastructure. So if somebody veers off the road because of whatever reason and then goes and rams into a concrete structure, then that leads to kinetic energy being transferred almost instantly through the vehicle, seriously injuring or killing people. So when we look at road crashes, and the way to solve the problem is to look at it scientifically, because we are able to now dissect what exactly caused the crash and what exactly caused the injury. And we are then able to triangulate as to what the solution could be to stop that fatality or serious injury from happening.
Uh, you know, uh, as a nation, I often felt that we're very, very good at having the right regulation, having the right law passed to address a problem. Of course, we have our challenges in terms of execution of that. Um, from that perspective, has the Motor Vehicles Amendment Act 2019 been able to achieve its intended aim of making Indian roads safer?
The Motor Vehicle Amendment Act of 2019 is the first major amendment to the Motor Vehicle Act of 1988. Um, uh, a number of statutes that were earlier missing, like protection of children during commute, like holding road contractors and engineers accountable for faulty roads, like ensuring forensic investigation of road crashes. All of that got incorporated into this new legislation.
Hmm.
Also, what a 100 rupee fine was in 1988, just by applying inflation, should today be over 1,000 rupees. So that correction was also done in terms of what the deterrent effect of fines and challans ought to be. Also, interesting procedures like electronic enforcement have been incorporated, and so on and so forth. Now, the law got notified in late 2019, and unfortunately, COVID struck, post that. So the implementation of the law has been fairly weak when it comes to state governments. Uh, State governments have had to make rules, which, for example, around protection of pedestrians and cyclists, which is a matter that is under the state list. Also, for example, state roads. And no, there's not a single state in the country right now that has made either rules around protection of non-motorized transport and pedestrians, or road construction standards in their states.
Wow.
And it's been close to 4 years now since the law has been passed. So while the law and its intention, its preamble, its contents are meant to save lives, it requires a lot more proactive action from state governments to ensure that things that they have to do towards implementation of the law are indeed carried out. So one of our core goals at Save Life for the next couple of years is to ensure 100% implementation of the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act. Because if the law is implemented properly, we know that it will have an impact, on the situation on the ground right now.
You started off by saying that it's the first major amendment to a law that was enacted in '88. So it has taken us, more than 3 decades to sort of to amend it. But is that enough? Does it need further amendments, or do you feel the issue is more about ensuring the implementation of the law, like you just mentioned?
Right. So between 1988 and 2019, there were minor amendments to the law. So it's not like it was completely untouched since that period of time. But this is the first comprehensive amendment of 2019. Now, in terms of any further amendments, yes, there are some tweaks required. There are some things required to be incorporated. While that happens, I completely agree with you that I think there is a massive challenge with implementation of the law. And until the law is properly implemented, it will not have the desired effect. Now, thankfully, in addition to government's efforts, the Supreme Court of India has also constituted a committee to ensure and monitor implementation of this law. Supreme Court recognized this issue as a national emergency, given the high number of people that are dying and getting injured because of this issue, almost on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And therefore there is a Supreme Court committee that is monitoring it. So we are hopeful that the dual pressure from the union and from the Supreme Court, Committee on Road Safety, will ensure more rapid and more concerted implementation of this law, which so far has been missing and has been a big challenge in terms of creating the desired impact.
We've all seen our share of road crashes, be it on television or in newspapers, or, God forbid, before our own eyes. Witnessing a crash can be a very harrowing and difficult visual to get over. 1 in 3 road crashes in India turn fatal. So, what is one of the things that we need the most? It's good and prompt emergency care that is easily accessible to everyone on the road. What steps are being taken to improve our emergency care system? Are these enough, or is it a lot more required in this area? You started off the episode talking about the tragic incident that happened in your life. And one of the things you mentioned is it was a very treatable uh, thing, right? You had, if you had access to the right facilities and the right kind of help. Crash severity in India is such that every 1 in 3 road crashes result in fatality. Now, I have two different questions on this. One is this a very high number compared to, for example, other parts of the world? And second is, where do we stand when it comes to emergency care today? How far have we come there?
Right. So, in terms of crash severity, which is the deaths per 100 crashes, unfortunately, India leads the world in crash severity.
Ah,
And that is also the right way to look at this problem, and not merely from a total number perspective, because from a population standpoint, India is so large that the numbers might always seem justifiable. That it's such a large country, per 100,000 deaths are lower than other countries, so it should be okay. But when it comes to how dangerous the roads are, India has the most dangerous roads, because it's close to 38 people who are killed per 100 crashes. So there is a big part of the problem when it comes to how safe the roads are. Now there are many reasons why that happens, and one of the reasons behind that is is the poor provision of emergency medical services. Now, the problem with emergency medical services in India is that emergency medical services are almost always construed to be starting and ending with ambulances. So, states are investing massively in ambulances. We know that the 108 services are coming up. They're actually doing well from the ambulance service perspective. But what happens before and after? What happens before the arrival of ambulance, and what happens after the ambulance delivers the person to a hospital for care? Now, ideally, it should be a linked chain. From the time the incident happens, you need access to care, which is the ability to call a number that is easy to remember even for a 6-year old. You then have to ensure that there is some basic care being provided to the victim while help is arriving, and that the Good Samaritan law that SaveLIFE Foundation delivered a few years ago ensures protection for bystanders that they come forward to help an injured person. And by help, we mean something as simple as making a phone call to the police and saying words of comfort, if in case you're not trained in dealing with bleeding or CPR or C-spine immobilization. Now, once the ambulance arrives, is the ambulance equipped merely to transport the victim, or is it equipped to intervene and sustain life during that transfer? When the transfer is happening, is information being given to a receiving hospital that we are coming in? There is a head injury, there's a spinal injury, there's a XYZ or whatever it is, right? So that the hospital can prepare. Once you arrive at the hospital, does the hospital have a set of protocols and procedures to ensure that the victim that is arriving is received properly and is
hmm,
provided immediate care, and if required, an immediate surgery, right? Now, all of these things that I just told you are either completely missing or fractured.
hmm,
So you might have a good ambulance service, but you might not have a universal access number, and you might not have a prior notification system, and then you might not have good, competent in hospital services. So, emergency medical care in India at this point of time is a fractured system, and not really a system because it's not concerted. Nobody has really brought it together. So our effort at Save Life is to advocate for and push for a cohesive, concerted, comprehensive system that starts from the scene of an incident and ends with rehabilitation, not just care. So that entire chain is what we call the chain of survival, and that chain of survival is what requires significant amount of effort and interest for it to be established. Otherwise, I visit highways very frequently as a part of my work, and our teams are there quite frequently. And god forbid, if we unfortunately, if there's an incident, road crash that takes place involving us, I have no hopes of surviving, because we know exactly the condition of trauma services, especially on our highways, and that's something that has to be improved. Now, the good news is that the NHAI recently has taken massive steps to at least improve ambulance response on national highways. And but again, the problem then comes with in hospital care. Where am I being taken to up, post that ambulance service? So all of that has to be looked at comprehensively and as a system, and that is something that we are now have been doing now for the last few years. And this year we are making a major push to see if we can ensure the establishment of this missing system.
Hmm. And I was just thinking as you were talking to, if you were to look at the numbers in a different light, to know that if you are involved in a car crash, your chance of survival is actually less than 60%. That makes
Yeah,
you rethink everything, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, and of course, the what I'm understanding from the fractured chain is that it's only probably as good as the weakest link.
yes,
And if if you have a great one, two, three, and if you don't have a great step four in it, then it's a pointless one, isn't it?
yes,
Um, yeah, so I'm very happy someone like you is helping fix this very very concerning problem. You also spoke
thank you.
about the Good Samaritan law, a law that got passed, because of SLF, and a lot of your own contribution to this. But as someone who's helped, create this, right? Um, how do you feel about its impact, right, on road crashes and the response? Because whenever I've spoken to an expert or someone from the medical side of this, they've called it out very clearly that after the passing of this law, there's been a significant increase in the number of occurrences where people are accompanying a passerby is accompanying someone, a victim, to the hospital, right? So, but from your vantage point, as someone who's helped create this, um, how do you see the impact of what is happening?
Yeah, traditionally up until 2016, there was a fair amount of hesitation in people in trying to come forward and help an injured person, primarily because of three reasons.
Right.
One was the fear of intimidation and harassment at the hands of police, perhaps, which could start by by means of questioning, and then continuous summons to the police station and so on and so forth. It could then the second reason was detention at hospitals. If you're taking a victim to the hospital might detain you till the time police arrives. In some cases might also force you to make payments, or force you to take the victim somewhere else if you're unable to do so. The third issue really was, if none of this happens and you merely are a witness in the case, because of the fact that you were involved in bringing the victim to the hospital, then prolonged court procedures, again summons, and people like you and I can perhaps afford it, but a person who's on the road earning a living, who decides to leave their cart and help an injured person on the road, or jump out of their petrol station and go and help someone, they are losing daily wages in this entire process, and getting intimidated by the whole system simply for the act of trying to save a life. Now, when that's the premise on which we moved the Supreme Court of India back in 2012, and in 2016, the Supreme Court passed sort of a binding judgment on all courts of the country, stating that Good Samaritans have to be insulated from these three things. So, and then the Government of India, under Section 134A of the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act, incorporated the Good Samaritan law into the legislative law. So it became
Hmm.
a legislatively backed statute. Now, the problem is that uh, while the law exists, if my rights are still violated, I have nowhere to go except for the court. There is no grievance redressal mechanism that exists at the executive level. There is no clarity in terms of the process to follow if in case my rights are violated. There is no clarity in terms of who the custodian is of the Good Samaritan law in each state of the country. Who should be the one who should be ensuring or acting as an ombudsman to ensure that the law is implemented properly because it pertains to rights and so on and so forth. So that's a gap that currently exists in this whole process. And our effort with the upcoming amendment to the Motor Vehicle Act is to ensure that we fill that gap by getting a grievance redressal mechanism mandated in that system. Besides that, I don't think there are any major issues with this particular implementation of the law. As you rightly said, People feel a lot more confident now to come forward and help the injured. Many states have also launched reward schemes to
Mm,
recognize good Samaritans who come forward to help the injured. Although we feel that such action should be without consideration of any reward and should be done on a purely on a human basis. But
yeah.
anyway, states are trying to do things to encourage people to come forward and help. So that's something that is a positive piece. The one area where we feel states can do a lot more, in addition to grievance redressal mechanism, is training of the people in how do you
Mm,
actually professionally or semi-professionally handle trauma, right? How do you lift a person carefully? How do you, what side should you turn them to so they don't choke on the fluids, so on and so forth. So there are various skills that are required. It's called basic trauma life support skills, and we feel that BTLS is a life skill. Everybody should have that because majority of emergencies also happen at home. So you should be able to save the life of your own family member if they were to be in an emergency medical situation. So it's a life skill that is required. So grievance redressal mechanism and comprehensive training of citizens in BTLS are two things that are required that I think states must do, and they'll see that it has many other positive effects, because during mass casualties, earthquakes, so on and so forth, you have a lot more trained people at hand to be able to help those who are in need of help at that point of time.
yeah. We probably as a society at a stage where the level at which we're able to train ourselves, using the resources available digitally is very high, and I can't think of something more important than this that all of us, irrespective of who we are, need to spend time on. Did you know that fatalities on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway came down by 52% between 2016 and 2020? They really did. What changed? How did the authorities manage to get the number of road crash fatalities down in such a major way? How did people's own habits and actions change what has led to a reduction in these numbers? Taking a different tangent, tell us a little bit about what zero fatality corridor solution means and how data and evidence are playing a huge role in coming up with nuanced solutions that are actually bringing down a number of crashes and fatalities.
Right. So, Karthik, you might recall when I started off, I mentioned that every crash has a cause of a crash and cause of an injury. And
Yes.
what Save Life does is we go deep into analyzing what those causes are, and we have a matrix, which is globally available, which is called the Hayden's matrix, where we put those causal factors, into a matrix to understand what really transpired in a particular crash. Now, in many cases, for example, we discover that certain engineering issues on the road might not lead to a crash, but might enhance injury. So the
Hmm.
solution to that is that you attenuate those, or you fix those solutions so that even if a crash happens, it does not lead to severe injury. So, for example, if there is an exposed bridge pillar or there's an exposed drain wall, then you put crash barriers to prevent someone from going and hitting that concrete structure directly. And crash barriers absorb the energy of a crash and reduce the severity of the collision, essentially saving lives. Similarly, in many cases in engineering, we've seen that on highways there are gaps in the central median, so people take illegal U-turns or sudden U-turns that lead to rear-end collisions. So there are a large number of issues that we've been able to track around engineering. Similarly, under police enforcement, there are some issues. Under trauma care, we know what is right and what is wrong. We also know behaviorally what has to be addressed from a driver perspective. Now, the Zero Fatality Corridor program brings all of this entire piece together and implements it on a target stretch of highway, which is in most cases the deadliest road in a particular state or deadliest one of the deadliest roads in the country. So we've started picking up the most dangerous highways and most dangerous roads in the country to implement the Zero Fatality Corridor. And it starts with understanding the problem, diagnosing the problem, figuring out what the solutions are. And solutions in our case, and that's an area where people can get involved with us, is that there's a huge scope for innovation. If I have to put a drone in the sky to preemptively identify parked vehicles on a highway so I can prevent a rear end collision at night, I will do that. If we have to support the system by deploying cameras which will be AI based, that can also catch distracted driving inside the cabin, we will do that. So whatever it takes is what we have to do. The good thing is that now various sections of the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act 2019 support the work that we are doing. So, for example, now Section 135 of the Motor Vehicle Act mandates forensic investigation of crashes. That's something that we are already doing, and we are training police departments to do. Section 136 A talks about electronic enforcement, deploying cameras and other technologies, and we are already doing that. And therefore, we are able to now support the system in telling them what works and what doesn't. So, in a way, it's becoming a sort of a laboratory for us. This whole zero fatality corridor project, to see what might work in the entire country from different state perspective. And currently the program is under implementation in 16 states in the country on 26 corridors. And this year, we are taking the initiative to 100 highways across the country. So it's a comprehensive program that looks at fatality reduction through a scientific approach and through a collaborative approach. So we have multiple agencies working with us. We have local community involved with us. So the idea is that we are able to work together with the entire system to
Hmm.
fix the problem and then institutionalize the solutions in the system, so that the system can then continue to do what we are doing, and we can move on to other things.
Which is amazing. And just to paraphrase this, you let me know if I've gotten this right. What I'm taking away from what you're saying is that it is possible at the confluence of data, technology, machine learning, which is a subset of technology, and of course, mobilizing communities to actually bring down bring down fatalities to zero or near zero as a number, right? Is that a takeaway that is credible?
Yes, absolutely. So, fundamentally, we operate at the intersection of everything that you said. It's technology, community, data, evidence, and innovation is what really drives the work that we do.
That's really amazing, and also very hope giving, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had
Yeah.
significant reduction in deaths on many roads. So we've most recently, between 21 and 22, we have seen a 33% drop in fatalities on National Highway 48 in the Satara Kagal section. We have seen a 61% drop in fatalities on Old Mumbai-Pune Highway, which is NH48's Mumbai-Pune section. We have seen
Wow.
about 40% drop in deaths on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, which is a parallel road, which is a faster road. So we've had, and Yamuna Expressway, we've seen about 40% drop in deaths. NH19 in UP, which is Agra to Etawah, Etawah to Chakeri, which is Kanpur, we have seen
Hmm.
about 18% drop in deaths in the last 1 year. So we know that the program is working, and over the course of time, we will take multiple of these roads towards zero fatalities.
Amazing. Piyush, we're towards the end of the episode. Um, from this platform today, what is that one message that you want to give to fellow citizens and road users, and one to policymakers and bureaucrats, which are connected to road safety in one form or another?
Right. From a citizen perspective, there are fundamentally three messages that I have, which are three simple messages. The first message is that uh, a road is a shared space.
Hmm.
It's a privilege to be on a road and not a right. You need to be ensuring that uh, while you are operating on the road, you give way to the weakest folks operating on the road. So what we call the vulnerable road users, so pedestrians, cyclists, two-wheeler riders, should get safer access, because they are most exposed in the event of getting involved in a crash. The second piece is that this is to pretty much everyone, but especially parents, that a vehicle in the hands of an untrained person is a weapon, and that weapon can and does kill people in large numbers across the country each year. So we have to ensure that, just like we would take care while handling a weapon, we take care while handling a vehicle, and we get a similar amount of training. we get practice, we ensure that we are extra careful when we are on the roads, and that is what fundamentally will ensure that we don't get into collisions and crashes and so on and so forth. And the third and the final point for citizens is that if you see an injured person on the road, please do not ignore. At the very least, you can call for help. And if you're trained, please do provide help. But the least you can do is call for help and give words of comfort to the person who's suffering on the road so that they know that they're not alone there and they know that help is arriving. I think just being positive in that mindset, while being injured, really enhances chances of survival of a person because they, then start fighting to live. So I think it's very important that that's the most basic thing one does when they see an injured person on the road. From a policymaker perspective, the only point that I want to convey is that road safety is not merely an infrastructure or a public health issue. It's really a moral issue facing our country because it's an issue of equity. It's an issue of
Hmm.
rights. It's an issue of ensuring that the poorest and the most vulnerable people who can't afford safe modes of transport get similar levels of safety that other citizens do. So it's really a moral issue from that standpoint, which is that we have to ensure that we protect the most vulnerable, the weakest people on the road. And that is where policymakers can play the biggest role, which is to ensure that this issue sort of is brought up on a regular basis, and in their jurisdictions, it is addressed as an equity and a rights issue, and not merely as an infrastructure issue.
Piyush, thank you so much for this conversation. It was both insightful
Thank you.
and very, very inspiring. Thank
Thank
you
you so
for
much.
everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you.
That brings to the end of this episode, and by extension, this season of Milestones, the Save Life podcast. My name is Karthik Nagarajan. If you have been tuning in and feel that road safety deserves way more attention than it gets, please do consider sharing this episode with your family and friends. Do also review us on whichever podcast apps you listen to us on. If you're watching this on YouTube, do leave a comment to let us know what you'd like to see us cover next. For more on all things road safety, please visit Save Life Foundation's website at www.savelifefoundation.org or any of its social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you soon again. Drive safe, stay safe.
IVM